Welcome to the Ryan Frank Podcast. Ryan is a family man, first and foremost, but he's also a pastor, publisher, and serial entrepreneur. This podcast will help you think, work, and create like never before.
Welcome to the Ryan Frank Podcast. This is Ryan Frank, and we are in for a great episode today. Do you ever wish you could find joy and purpose outside of your 9 to 5? Whatever that 9 to 5 is, whether you work in the secular or the sacred. I know a lot of you are pastors and ministry leaders, but we have a lot of business leaders and stay-at-home moms and others that watch or listen to the podcast. Do you wish, whatever your 9 to 5 is, do you wish you had something else? Maybe God has given you a dream to write a book or to start a business or to create some service or to launch a blog or a podcast or to do more on social media. Or maybe there's this ministry you've always felt in your spirit that you wanted to start, but you just haven't done it. How do you finally jump in and find real joy and purpose outside of that 9 to 5 of yours? That's what we're going to talk about today. Jordan Davis is joining me on the podcast. Jordan's a good friend. He's a children's pastor here in Indiana. He's also part of the Kids Matter team. He leads Kids Matter Pro. He is one of our leaders at the Kids Matter conference. But he recently found something outside of his 9 to 5, and he loves it. And God is using it. It's growing, and it's even coming full circle and impacting his church ministry. And I'm not going to tell you what it is. You have to listen to the podcast to find out, but you're going to love hearing his story. And I know you're going to find a lot of help and encouragement along the way. Hey, as you're listening to this podcast, we are just about a month away from the Kids Matter Conference. We'd love to have you there. The Kids Matter Conference is an event for the premier event, in my humble opinion, for children's ministry leaders and their teams. There is still time to get tickets. Go to thekidsmatterconference.com. We would love to have you in Nashville, Tennessee, September 12th, 13th, and 14th. Get your tickets, get signed up. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful event. We hope to see you all there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump into today's conversation with Jordan Davis. And let's talk about what life can be like beyond your 9 to 5. And how to find real joy and purpose outside of your regular scheduled office hours, whatever that may look like for you. Let's get this show on the road. Friends, here's my conversation with Jordan. Hey, what's up, Jordan? Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I'm excited about this.
Well, thank you for being here with us. We could have met together. We only live an hour apart, but
no, we should have. We got to do that soon.
Fellow Hoosiers here in Indiana.
Yep.
And if you're a Kidmin leader listening or watching the podcast today, you probably know Jordan from the I Love Kidmin Facebook group, from Kids Matter Conference, from Kids Matter Pro. If you don't know Jordan, he's a great guy with a great ministry. Jordan, take a few minutes and just tell us about yourself, your family, your ministry journey, what your ministry looks like today.
Awesome. Yeah. So I started ministry. My wife and I actually got married in 2005, but I've been doing ministry just really since I was in high school, and really didn't think kids ministry was going to be where I ended up. I went and got a Bible degree and was going to be a senior pastor. And it's funny, but like all I've ever known is kids ministry. I was the kid that they stuck in the nursery when I was little and could make the babies calm down. Man, so high school, I started teaching large group every Sunday in our church. And so we were a smaller church, couldn't really afford a kids pastor at that time. And so that was just me and some adults that were in that room. And then I went off to college and kind of forgot about that for a little bit, did some after school programs and those kind of things. And then in my second year, kind of in school, I started helping out at a church, and it turned into a position by my third year. And so I've been doing ministry for almost 20 years right now, and got married to a girl that loves youth ministry. And so we did ministry together for a while. So Katie, my wife, has done youth ministry for about 18, 19 years too. And so we've been able to be on staff together at churches. We've been not on staff, one of us on staff at a church. We've kind of taken turns back and forth. And both of us just love now developing leaders. And we have 3 boys. So right now, whatever type of ministry or work you're in, you may understand this pain of, I have a high school student, a middle school student, and an elementary student right now. So we are busy.
I love it.
So Jordan, when did you feel like the Lord was calling you into vocational ministry at a church?
Yeah, I actually felt it pretty early. I preached my first sermon my sophomore year of high school, and really felt that call early, but really ran from it. And especially as a senior in high school, I was going to try to stay in state and go to school. And I really felt, it's kind of a funny story, but we were at the beach after my senior year, had just graduated, and I was enrolled to go to school in Kentucky at Kentucky Christian University, and I was going to stay close to home. And I went up to my dad while we were at the beach and said, "Hey, I think I'm supposed to move to Oklahoma City and go to a Bible college there." And he's like, "What? You've already enrolled? You've already been through some of the orientation stuff?" And we turned around and went to visit the school in Oklahoma. And I think that really that journey, feeling God and really turning, just running straight to Him, was really that, defining factor in my life.
Yeah. And how old were you when that happened?
So I was 18.
18. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, how neat. Was your dad a pastor?
No, dad's not a pastor. My mom is a nurse. My dad's an engineer.
Okay.
But they faithful people. My mom always did vacation Bible school at our churches, and always did, was in leadership and kids ministry in some way. So I think I get a lot of the kids stuff from her.
Yeah.
And
Well, tell us what the church is like that you're serving at now.
Yeah. So I'm at Church of the Crossing in Indianapolis. So if you've been in Indianapolis, we are the church that some people know only because our position in town. We're kind of landlocked, but we have the Highway 465 goes all around Indianapolis, and we're on the farthest northwest corner kind of 465. And so a lot of people have seen our church, but I've been here a little over 4 years, and I kind of measure it by, I've been here for 5 VBSs. So it feels like a little longer, but about 4 years, and just really love here. Just being able to work with a great team. I have a kid staff that is awesome, and really here, just really trying to transform this church into doing a lot more outreach. So we're trying to do, go out in our community a lot more. We just started our own nonprofit. And I have a passion that we'll talk about here in a little bit, but we do a lot of food and legal clinics, and just really reaching our neighborhood here.
Yeah. I love it. Now, Jordan, you have a growing ministry. You're working at a great church in the Indianapolis area. But today we're talking about, really beyond 9 to 5. And I know for those of you that are pastors and ministry leaders, and I think for most people that lead, whether it's in the ministry or marketplace, 9 to 5 really doesn't exist. You're always leading, you're always on, you're always thinking, you're always playing chess in your head about what's next. If you're a pastor or ministry leader, you're 24/7 taking care of people spiritually, their spiritual needs. But we want to talk about, how do you really discover joy and purpose, even outside of whatever your 9 to 5 is? Now, Jordan, can you share an experience where you felt a need to do something? I know you're doing something outside of your ministry, so maybe I'm teeing you up for this, but maybe you could set it up or tell us the backstory on, why did you start doing something outside of your 9 to 5? What prompted you to do that? And what have you discovered in the process?
Yeah, so actually it was a conversation I had with somebody I look up to, and he was talking to me about just what brings me joy. What's a maybe a stress relief? What do I live for outside of ministry? And I'm like, man, ministry is everything. And I realized in our conversation that, one, I was working way too much at the church, and two, that the only joy besides God and my family I had was my per se occupation. I think it's a dangerous slope that pastors get in a lot, as we try to find all of our joy after God and family is just in church stuff.
That's true.
But yet we're asking our people in our church to work a 9 to 5, find joy, hopefully in their 9 to 5. Hopefully they're running a job or doing something that they love.
Yeah.
But then we're asking them again to step out and volunteer and to do ministries. And so I talked about, I find joy in golf. I love golf. I love playing golf. I love fishing, all these things. And I really think for years, I thought they brought me joy. But what I realized is all those things could be, one, taken away pretty easy. Two, they definitely were things that were kind of a hill of up and down. There were the times I loved certain things doing, and I realized that they were really hobbies or passions. And I think I came to a realization that there's a difference in a passion and happiness and joy. And joy is something deep inside you. And what I realized is I love to cook for people. I love to serve people that way. And I think it's kind of one of those things of funny of, for years, I would always test in spiritual gift test super high in hospitality. And I'm like, dude, I'm a huge dude, big burly dude. And I'm in a classroom usually with all these ladies that are interior decorators or these things. And I'm like, how is this possible, God? Didn't you give me something else? And so I think I've realized that I've tried to embrace that over the last few years. And so what I've done about a year and a half, 2 years ago, really right kind of during COVID, I started doing a lot more cooking, and I love to smoke meat. I love to barbecue. And it's something I picked up even stronger during that time of COVID. And I started realizing that I could do it for people and people enjoyed it. And it started to bring me joy. And what I realized is if somebody was going to call me and ask me to go play golf and say, hey, I'm going to pay your favorite course, it's super expensive, and I'm going to pay half of it. Well, that's great. But if somebody said at the same time, I got offered an opportunity to go cook for somebody and it was going to cost me, I started to begin to realize I was choosing the thing that was even going to cost me. It was going to cost me more, but it excited me because I knew it was going to make me feel good, and it served a passion. So I think I kind of started realizing that joy is one of those things that, man, it's from the inside. I think people try to find joy from outward people or outward things, but joy is something that I need to do for myself and that God does for me. And so then I realized that God was blessing that. And so I started doing videos, and we started doing videos where nobody was watching, and just kept plugging away because it brought me joy, even though only 5 people maybe were watching these videos. And then tons of people started watching these videos, and that brought me more joy. And then I was able to really go through a passion of, now I'm able to start, like next Friday, I'm starting a new series where I'm able to do free food Fridays, and I'm going to go and hand out free food to fire stations and police stations and teachers and pastors, and just have people nominate people that are servants and able to do that for free. So even though it's going to cost me, it brings me joy.
I love that. How neat. And if you're not following Jordan on social media, as far as this cooking thing, tell us how to do that, Jordan.
Yeah, so it's at Smoking Pastor, all social media forums. Have a logo that's red and black, and it says The Smoking Pastor. I started out with that, and now I'm really moving into how can I cater and do things all to pay for, something I want to do that is big. It's a big dream later on. Yeah,
I love it. Well, we had a Kids Matter retreat here a few months back, and Jordan catered it, did a wonderful, wonderful job. You're great at the smoker. Great chicken. I mean, it was good. I'm getting hungry thinking about it, Jordan. That's good stuff. Jordan, talk to the leaders out there, or all of us that are watching or listening to the podcast today, and tell us what are some of the dangers of not finding joy and purpose outside of your work. Again, whether your work is in the ministry or it's in the marketplace. What are the dangers of not finding joy and purpose outside of your work?
Yeah, well, I think, one of the things I've realized, and I think it helps people understand, is usually if you're finding joy only in your workplace or your 9 to 5, that's probably controlled by somebody else. Unless you're a business owner, that joy is controlled by somebody else. And so what I realized is the joy I found even in my workplace usually has somebody else speaking into it and controlling it and setting up that time frame. And I realized I needed something to not only fulfill myself, but really feel like I was living out my true calling as a Christian, not just a pastor. And I needed to find something that embraced that joy that I could do outside. And what I realize now with the barbecue stuff is that I've got my whole family engaged in this. It's been one that my son is getting to be very good at video editing, and my other son has taken up a passion for cooking, and my wife is helping me put out recipe cards now. And all these things are seeing us do this as an outside 9 to 5 that is encompassing our whole family. And it's also filling that spot for me that, especially as a pastor, for you that are in church leadership, it's doing something outside the church for people that you're not connected to normally. As a pastor, a lot of times we wait for people to come to our church and feel like we can help them. I'm getting to help people that would never step in the doors of our church. And so I think that is bringing me the most joy.
Yeah, I love it. And if you're listening, don't check out if you think, well, I don't like the smoked barbecue.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking about just preparing food, right? I mean, this could be volunteering at the YMCA, leading a cycle class. I mean, the sky is really the limit, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things I've just really learned over the last little bit. A couple very influential, wealthy people in our church that I think I came here with a perception of them. And now that I've got to know them, when I sit and talk to people that have owned big businesses or were doctors for some crazy celebrities, I realize these people, they're not defined at all by their 9 to 5. Like, they want to talk to you about something that's exciting in their lives. There's a guy in our church that you would know who he is, but you know what he loves to do? He volunteers at the Boys and Girls Club. That's what he loves to do. That is his joy. And that is not in any Wikipedia name search about him. It's not who he's known for, but that's what he loves. And so I think for me, I've realized that, we put statuses and labels and abbreviations next to these people's names, but that's not what they want to be known for. That's not the things that bring them joy. And so trying for us as humans to learn from that, as Christians to learn from that joy is found outside of, our normal things.
Yes. Boy, that's so true. So true. And I think, in addition to finding something that brings you joy and purpose, it's also, Jordan, and I think you'd agree with me on this, finding something else is also, you need that, I don't know if diversion is the right word, but, you more than likely, whatever it is, whatever that 9 to 5 is, for most of you that listen or watch the podcast, I think you're ministry people. So maybe ministry, you need something else to decompress, to get your mind off of, what's the heavy stuff you've been carrying all day. Do you find that it's a diversion for you as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think especially before I did a lot of this stuff, the stress that I would take home was huge. And what you realize is when you have something to go home to, you're almost finding something else to look forward to. Besides going home to your family, you're finding something that is exciting and also even gives you some mental breaks throughout the day. Our church staff now wants to talk to me about, feeding the community or goals that we have now, even in our church. Like, hey, you could help us with this because you have a passion for this outside these walls. And so people are going to have joy found in crazy things. It could be, people are going to find joy in skydiving classes. Maybe I want to teach that. That's crazy. Cool. And that's something any of us can't do. Not all of us have that joy from that, but it's something different. It's something crazy. It's something that God gives you a joy that is different than everybody else's. And I think that is a lot of how we're made up as Christians, and that's how we're wired.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody out there that maybe is thinking, well, I don't know if I have time for this. I'm busy. I'm afraid if I try to tackle something else, then I won't be able to get done what I'm getting paid to get done. What would you say to someone who's maybe negative or skeptical, although that may not be their motive, but they're really wondering, like, man, I don't know if I, one, have the time, or two, have the capacity for anything else, or three, what if I do that? If I pick up something else and I'm already busy enough, what would you say to that person?
I would say almost that you don't have time not to, that to be healthy mentally and physically and spiritually, you have to find something outside of your occupation that gives you joy. And the fact that what I have found is it doesn't stress me out. It doesn't feel like it's life sucking. In fact, it's life very giving. And I can make time for it because people around me that are close to me, that love me, see how much joy it brings me, see that, one, I'm going to be in a better mood, two, that I am able to learn and to grow in my faith even more because of this.
I love that.
I'm able to also put people around me. Part of what I love to do is network, and it opens that door up for me to meet some crazy people. Yeah.
I think you're right. I don't know that anybody would ever do this. I suppose you might look back and say, boy, I wish I wouldn't have done that, or I would have done something different. But boy, there is just so much upside. And Jordan, going back to what you said five or 10 minutes ago, I love that. I love this idea that you're going to even do some free food Fridays and just bless some people. Yeah. What a great, how'd you get that idea? It's a great idea.
Well, it's crazy. But this whole thing is just working into a long-term goal I have. And that's one of the things I think, maybe one of the directions we want to go with this is, my wife and I have a goal to open a bed and breakfast one day, to bring pastors in for free and just give them, rest. It's not an agenda of how do you get better in leadership, just rest, here's some good food and here's a good bed to sleep in and be able to get away. And so we started looking at how we're going to get there. And what I realized is I wasn't doing anything currently to pursue that dream. It's a dream we've had that we keep saying we're going to get to one day. And what I realized is through this, I am paving a way and learning a lot that's going to help me get there one day.
Yeah.
And I also learned that I wasn't anticipating the unexpected. God throws me curveballs all the time and allows things to happen. And what I've realized is I wasn't ready for them. Yeah. And so I've really tried to realize that I have to be ready for anything, ready for the unexpected, that God's going to bless these things that we're doing. And so I was like, hey, if I'm going to do that, then I want to be able to automatically give a portion back of what I'm already doing. So as I cater something now, I'm giving something away, and I'm trying to make it to where I'm giving more away than I'm bringing in right now.
Yeah. I love it. God will bless you for that. Yeah. I love what you said a minute ago, Jordan, about this dream that God has given you. And thank you for being honest enough to say, hey, I really looked at what am I doing to see that happen. I wasn't doing anything. And how many of us, how many people, cemeteries are full. You've heard it said of books that were never written and, ideas that never happened, dreams that never, developed. And here's what podcast listeners, what I don't want for you is I don't want you to die with your dreams and you never attempted them. They just lived up here in your brain. At some point you've just got to take some steps. Yeah. And I think faith, works into that. Jordan, as a Christian, and I know you do too, as a Christ follower, that it's when we take those steps of faith toward our dream, even if it doesn't make sense, even if it's giving away free food and it's costing me out of my pocket, but it's one step further toward my dream. I believe those are the kind of dreams then that actually happen and that God chooses to bless. Don't you agree?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And especially if you're trying to move towards something, but you're doing nothing right there, right now, how are you working toward that dream? And if God wants to bless it, you're putting no momentum, no faith, no anything into it right now. And so you've got to, put, as it says, put that best foot forward and start beginning to walk that journey.
Yeah.
And a crazy thing that happened to me this week, I wasn't ready for. I cooked for an event a few weeks ago, and there was a person that's a pretty good big celebrity, and he has a nationally syndicated radio station. He mentioned me this week on his show. He was talking about the best ribs he'd ever had and how, all these things. And this guy's not a Christian at all. And he said, I don't know, he's some religious figure, but, talking about me. And I wasn't ready for, one, the publicity. Two, I wasn't ready for the calls because I didn't think they were going to happen.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the worst feelings in the world is I have known for a while I needed to take some steps and some things I could have done to get to a certain point. I knew I needed to be at that point pretty quick. And now I feel very behind. And even though it still brings me joy, but it's like, okay, God, you blessed me in a crazy way. And I have not, done the things I needed to do to pursue it faster. So,
yeah. I love that. And I think for all of us that are watching or listening, I really hope that, that you'll apply this to your life wherever you're at. If maybe you have some financial goals, maybe you don't have anything saved up and you need to just start. Can you scratch together $20 a week and just start saving it and don't touch it? Or maybe, you need to just get a paper, take a paper route or some kind of a side gig for 10 or 15 hours a week and decide I'm just going to save this back. I'm tired of talking about having a savings. I'm tired of living stressed out. week after week financially, and I'm going to do something about it. Or
Yeah.
maybe God has put on some of you, maybe God's put on your heart a dream to start a business. For Jordan, he took some steps of faith and God is blessing this. Maybe God has put something on your heart a long time ago that you've had this product or this idea or this service in your head, and it's time to take some steps toward that. Or for some of you, I spent some time, Jordan, with somebody this morning, a good friend of mine, a couple hours, and he was talking about what he's doing to take care of himself, and he's tired of talking about it. Yep. And so he's decided, I'm going to start doing A, B, and C to start taking care of myself more.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of that is that of just sharing what's going on in your life, or what are you thinking with somebody else. We've talked to you about the barbecue stuff long before I did it.
You did.
And here's the deal is you're going to either one, get more excited about it and do something about it, or you're going to find out maybe this isn't something that one brings me joy or I have a passion for. Yeah. But at least start talking about your dreams, because you're going to get other people on board too along the way.
You're exactly right. And hang around dreamers, right? And not just dreamers, but people that are actually doing things to achieve their dreams. And it is crazy, Jordan, we've talked about this before, how our spirits, the way God's wired us, how our spirits rub off on each other. And you start hanging around people that aren't afraid to take steps toward their dream. And all of a sudden you find yourself with confidence to take steps toward your dream. But however, the flip side of the coin, if you choose to hang around people that are content with life as it is and only talk about things and never do things, guess what? That spirit's going to rub off on you.
Yeah,
right.
It is. I've been laughing at too of how many times God is using people that I know, one, probably aren't Christians, but two, aren't close to him at all, or even really care about some stuff I'm into, but he's using them to help me, pursue my dreams. And it's just so funny we've got guys that I've built some relationships with that have bought a food trailer for our church, so our church can do some of this stuff. And it's like, man, we have just been acquired all kinds of things over the last little bit, even in our church world, through people that really don't love the church. And it's amazing to see how God uses everybody around you.
Yeah. I agree. Jordan, earlier you said that your family was getting involved in this, which I love. Are there any, and this may be, because I wanted to talk to you about, just to get really practical boots on the ground, like what are some strategies or practices that you put in place to find time to do something outside of your 9 to 5? And I think part of that strategy can be get your family involved, right? That way you're not leaving your family, at home from 9 to 5 and then turn around and leaving your family at home from 6 to 10. So maybe getting your family involved could be a best practice or a strategy. You have any other thoughts on what you can do to actually discipline yourself to carve time out and make this happen?
Yeah, I think you have to create a schedule. I am not a detailed person. Know that I am not a person that does that, but I have to for this. The other thing is you got to find a way to incorporate it in your daily life. So for me, a lot of times it's cooking dinner. Even after a long, tiring day, I want to go home and try to cook with my family and get them excited about it. And then also allow my kids and my wife to speak vision into it also. That, hey, what do you all think we should do? I mean, this is a crazy idea. I mean, my 7-year-old wanted me to smoke gummy bears the other day. I'm like, that's probably not going to work. They're going to melt. We went over the science behind it. It's a great teaching lesson. But also some of my older kids are like, Dad, why don't you try this? Or why don't you do this? And they have some great ideas. And so one, they're going to feel like they're important, not only in your venture, whatever it is, but they're important to you. And it's a way that I can listen to my kids, that they can feel like they're speaking into something that I'm excited about. And it's amazing the relationship you have with that. I think also it's definitely a thing of you not only have to be disciplined, but you have to share the excitement and you have to embrace the fails. So when something doesn't work, man, my kids were walking and we're figuring out something. And I'm like, hey, here's why I didn't do this. Last night, my son and I went to go pick up something and it was one of those gut feelings. I just didn't feel good about what we were getting ready to do and where we were going. And I talked to him about, hey, these are things I see. And this could happen. I'm not saying, that person's a bad person or this is a bad situation. But I don't feel good about it. And so my experience tells me we're going to miss out on an opportunity maybe, but it's okay.
Yeah.
And so taking that as a teaching lesson with your family is so good. And also your friends, getting your friends involved. They're going to see that it brings you joy. So they're going to make time out of their busy schedules to help you because they know it makes you better.
Yeah. So good. You had a lot of little nuggets tucked in there, Jordan. That was good. I love what you said about not running from the failures, because just like in your 9-to-5, you experience failures. When you get serious about pursuing some other dreams or finding joy and purpose outside of your 9-to-5, Lord willing, you're going to experience favor and blessings. But if you're trying something new and you're putting yourself out there, it's not a question of, am I going to fail? It's really a question of, when's it going to happen and how am I going to respond? And am I going to grow from it? So don't let your failures keep you from pursuing those things. Don't let setbacks keep you from doing those things. How do you deal with failures or setbacks, Jordan? And really, how do you keep them? How do you allow those not to steal your momentum or your joy?
Yep. I think, I used to be so aggravated with them. And I think it's one of the separations of what I said earlier of, a failure in your job impacts other people. Yeah. Failure when you're trying to seek out joy and passions and things that you're wanting to go after really only affects you. Yeah. And so it's easier to control. It's less stress. And the only person you can blame is yourself in that too. And so it's easier to get through it because you're able to talk yourself through it. And that goes back to having the right people around you. I fail at something. Now I'm able to call friends that I know are going to speak life into me and say, hey, I'll call you Ryan, I screwed up. I tried this, and you're like, hey, well, what's the repercussions of it? Well, it cost me some money. Well, you know what? Yeah. That's okay. Cause you learned a big lesson. Yeah. And so I think that's one thing that's huge too. I think as we, mentor others and we train other leaders around us and our kids, you're embracing that and showing them, hey, I expect you to do great, but when you fail, I'm going to be here with open arms for you. Yeah. And the same way, when I go home, I'm going to be like, guys, man, I lost money on this catering gig today. Here's why. And so I'm teaching them not only business skills, I'm teaching them some humility, and I'm also teaching them that it's okay to not be okay. Yeah. And to not be perfect. And so then when they fail in school or fail in something, I got to remember that, because it's going to be super easy to turn the other way and be negative. And like, no, I just showed them it's okay. Now we're not going to make this a habit, but we're going to work on it together.
Yeah. So true. Well, boy, Jordan, we have hit a lot of good practical points. I hope those of you that are watching, listening to the podcast today, you need to go give the Smoking Pastor a follow on Instagram, and encourage Jordan that way. But I really want to encourage you to find joy and purpose, yes, in your 9-to-5, but also outside of your 9-to-5. Yeah. I think it'll stretch you. You'll find that you're meeting new people that you wouldn't have otherwise met. You're trying things you wouldn't have otherwise tried. You are growing skills and stretching muscles that you wouldn't have otherwise stretched. And truthfully, I think it ends up coming full circle, because it will positively impact whatever your 9-to-5 is. Yeah. Jordan, you've seen this, haven't you? I mean, you shared earlier how a lot of what you were seeing and trying and talking to people about, you're bringing back, and you're talking about how can we do this in our church, correct?
Yeah. And I think that's where joy keeps filling you up. The other things that you maybe make you happy, or even that you have a passion for, they're very, very easy to sway one way or the other, or to have a bad day in it. But when something truly brings you joy, even when it's bad, it's still going to bring you joy. It's just not going to bring you maybe as much joy on that day. And it's long-term. Joy is long-term.
Yeah, it is. Jordan, what would you say as we start to wrap up? What would you say, you could say one word to a listener out there or a viewer, that as we're having this discussion, something has been coming to their brain. Maybe it's a book that they've wanted to write, or a podcast they've wanted to start, or they've always wanted to learn a second language or a third language, or they've wanted to go back to school, or they've wanted to start this ministry or launch this business, or see if this product would actually sell in the market. What would you say to somebody who has always had this dream of doing something outside of their 9 to 5, but for whatever reason, they haven't done it? If you could tell them one thing, what would you say?
I would say you either have to try it or tell somebody about it. That's it. It's that simple. Do something with it. It's something inside you. And you're right. Like I have some bad ideas all the time and they may fail, but if I either try it and I'm going to know I'm going to fail, or I tell somebody about it and they're going to get excited about it, or they're going to get me more excited about it.
Yeah. Good advice. Good advice. Jordan, I always like to end the podcast by asking 2 questions. First, I'd love to hear from you. What's your favorite Bible story and what makes it your favorite Bible story?
It's so funny because it's always been Jesus feeds 5,000. And that's now like a lifelong, pursuit I'm on.
Yeah. Isn't that true? Yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
What about the story has always drawn you to it?
I think the thing of no matter what you have something to give. And even if you don't feel equipped or qualified or experienced enough, when Jesus gets inside you and uses you, it's endless, possibilities.
Oh, isn't that true? Yeah. Yeah. You may feel like you only have, what was it? 2 fish and 5 loaves.
Yeah, 5 loaves. Yeah.
Yeah. But God can feed thousands.
Yep.
And there be extra left over. Yeah. Great story. And now, one of these days, God's going to give you 5,000 mouths to feed. You're going to have to buy another smoker, aren't you?
Oh, I'll figure it out.
All right, Jordan. Second, love to hear something big that you're working on right now.
Yeah. So, really, it goes back to the bed and breakfast thing. My wife and I are like, all right, what are we going to start doing today to get there? Yeah. And so even just putting down, draw an arrow and say, hey, I'm here and there's nothing, but come up with a plan to get there one day. And don't keep saying that day is going to be someday. Do something today to get there. Yeah. And so we've started just even building relationships. We reached out to a couple that we halfway know through a grapevine now that do this. And it's like, okay, let's at least go down there and learn from them. Do something today to get there. And so that's something we're really pursuing. It's like, okay, and starting to figure out what you're doing now that's helping you get there. Like I said, this food truck thing may work out to be a regular catering business and then turn into these free food Fridays. And it's going to turn into maybe a restaurant that supports a free Airbnb or a bed and breakfast one day. Like you don't know.
Yeah. Well, the Bible says that the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, the steps. And I think a lot of times, Jordan, we get hung up because we want to know what's going to happen, around the corner. And we want to know what's going to happen a half mile down the road or in 2 months. But God doesn't always order our steps that He orders our steps 1 step at a time. Right.
Yep. And
I have found, as I know you have, because we've talked, Jordan, that often the most difficult steps are those first couple steps. Yeah. And then it starts to get a little easier, doesn't it? That doesn't mean it's going to be perfect and you're not going to have problems. But if you can just take those first couple steps by faith, steps 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 get a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
Well, Jordan Davis, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate what you are doing at your church, what you're doing in your community, and what you're doing to help us at Kids Matter. You're going to be at the Kids Matter conference. You're part of our leadership team. You lead Kids Matter Pro. You are just such a support to this ministry and to the Kidmin community. Thank you for everything that you and your family do.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the chance to do stuff like this. I love it. And
if
anybody wants to learn barbecue, they can reach out to me. I'll help them out.
The Smoking Pastor. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Jordan Davis. Jordan, once again, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
This episode of the Ryan Frank Podcast has ended, but be sure to subscribe for more conversations to help you stay on the leading edge. And if you like what you've heard, please rate this podcast with 5 stars. Thanks so much, and we will talk to you next time.